termite season.
Hi, it's me.
And bugs fear the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control.
Go blue at Essential Pest Control. We'll eliminate those bugs, bees, and termites. And stop paying too much to that national provider. Buy local for great service and affordable rates. Call Essential Pest Control because termites fear the blue.
Run for your life.
Call for the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. 886-3029. That's 886-3029. Or check online at essentialpest.com.
This is Eb Wilkinson with Wilkinson Wealth Management, where we manage money for gun owners. What does it mean to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired? It means designing a plan that allows you to do the things you want to do, outpace inflation, and never run out of money in your lifetime. If you want to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired, call me, Eb Wilkinson, at 777-1911. That's 777-1911 or WilkinsonWealthMGMT.com.
I'm proud to welcome my good friends at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail to Inside Track as an advertiser. Jamie Kipper and her staff are conservation experts. They sell round and square steel tubing, metal plate and roofing materials, as well as new and used steel, aluminum, and stainless steel to ranchers, artists, interior designers, roofers, as well as you do-it-yourselfers out there. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail is open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to noon. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, 701 East 36th Street. Call 520-209-1576. That's 520-209-1576, or go to TucsonIronRetail.com. Come by and be sure to ask for Jamie. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail. This is what conservation and repurposing is all about.
Welcome to Inside Track with Bruce Ash and Eb Wilkinson on the Live the Dream Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and a very pleasant good morning to you, wherever you may be. Welcome to Inside Track, episode 30. Wow. Bruce Ash and Eb Wilkinson coming to you live today from the Live the Dream Media Studios here in Southern Arizona. We hope you enjoyed a bountiful Thanksgiving celebration last week for you and your family. We have an action-packed big Wednesday show for you today on Inside Track. Thankfully, and I am thankful, Eb is back. We missed him. Eb had a little shoulder surgery recently. And how are you doing, big guy?
I'm doing great.
Man, you're not even wearing the sling or anything.
Well, as long as I'm here, I don't need the sling. Out in public, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Wow. You go.
Yeah, in just a few moments, RTA next executive, Michael Ortega, joins us to talk about the important decision for our greater Tucson community coming up in the spring of 2026 to re-up the regional transportation. Completing our show this morning, we'll feature Jimmy Hawkins, who played Tommy in the Hollywood classic It's a Wonderful Life. That's still a great film. Jimmy has a new book coming out on the 80th anniversary of the movie's release. He's going to be sharing the inside track about the behind-the-scenes stories from that great movie. Thanks for joining us on Live the Dream Media app or watching us on X, Facebook, YouTube, and any of the other platforms. The first half of the show today is going to be brought to you by our good friend Eric Rudin from Essential Pest Control. Call Essential to keep your home or business free from all forms of insects, vermin, and weeds today at 886-3029. And by the way, they're still doing a great job for me.
Yeah,
they're still doing a great job for Tammy.
Yeah, that's great.
They show up on time. They do what they say they're going to do.
That's right. Also supporting Inside Track, Tucson Iron and Metals, and Eb's great company, Wilkinson Wealth Management. We hope you will support each of these great businesses. Before we get to our special guest from the RTA, Michael Ortega, I heard from Onita Davis over the weekend during the Thanksgiving holiday, and she reports that enough of our friends had supported Wreaths Across America here in Southern Arizona that every single gravesite at the Marana State Veteran Cemetery will be covered. Eb, you and I contributed to that, and we're proud to support
It's a worthy cause.
Wreaths Across America again this year. Big thank you to all of our listeners and viewers who did so as well. Christy Simone also reported that the Bike in the Box campaign this year raised enough money to gift 500 bikes this year to needy kids in our community. Congratulations to Jesse Lugo, who's been doing this a long time, a great leader in our community, and to Christy Simone. The kiddos pick up their bikes this Saturday.
Jesse is such a great guy. We're pleased to welcome Michael Ortega, and we're so happy you could take some time out to speak with us today about RTA Next. Our guest came to Tucson after doing time in Douglas.
Not doing time.
I'm
doing
sorry.
Service.
Doing service. Why? It's
love
Douglas. It
and
is
there is
Douglas.
a prison down there. So.
and he was our city's manager for a whopping 8.5 years.
Longer than anybody.
Longer
had
than
ever-
anybody.
Is that amazing?
Yes. It's actually 9 years, the second longest tenured city manager in the history of Tucson.
Wow.
Second only to Joel Valdez.
Wow. Early this year, he became the executive for the RTA. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Eb. I'm glad to be here. I was waiting to make sure that wasn't a punchline there.
No, we're good.
But thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
When you got the call about the job opening, what were your first thoughts?
Well, the first thing I had to do was turn off all my machines because I was in my shop making some sawdust, and so I had to turn it all off. But it really was an honor to be considered and be called because there were some significant challenges of really trying to develop a plan, get it to the voters in time for the re-upping, if you will, the reauthorization, because it's set to expire in June of next year. And that's not a lot of time. You know, when you think about it, it was less than a year, and for an election and for a plan and the development, all that. And so I thought I'd talk to my wife, ask permission, quite frankly.
That's how you stay married, Marco.
That's exactly 45 years coming up. But it was really an opportunity to help, and that's really been the approach that I've taken. Is I can bring some skill sets, I can bring some things to the game and the situation that might be able to help. And I just said, okay, I'm in. Let's go.
So let me ask a question real quickly, kind of jumping in here. This was in July or August of earlier this year, right?
That's correct.
Was the consensus part of this process? It was going on until late in the summer of this year. Was it supposed to have got done before? If so, what was the holdup?
Well, in a perfect world, we would have gone to the voters maybe 2 years ago and had a discussion, right? And when I say have a discussion with the voters, that means go to the voters and ask them permission to do whatever it is that's on the plan. But for whatever reason, there was not an ability or able to come together. There just wasn't. It was very, very different perspectives. There was a variety of different conversations that were going on. And quite frankly, there was a question about how we would finish the original RTA. And so those were all thrown into a big pot, and there was just not the ability to come to consensus.
So before we get to where the money comes from, why does the RTA exist? What's the Regional Transportation Authority? What is it? Why is it there? And why do we care?
Sure. So if you think of it simplistically, the region gets about $54 million a year in state and federal gas tax or taxes for roads. That's it. That's the sum total of it. And so when you look at that, there's not enough money to address all of the needs in the region. It just isn't. Aside from that, those dollars have strings. And those strings are not established by the local folks. They're established by the feds or by the state, by the legislature, or by the federal government. So the conversation then is, how do we bring dollars to the region? How do we establish dollars in the region to address the needs, transportation needs, that have strings that the voters put on it, that the local voters, the Pima County voters put on it? And so all of a sudden, there's an opportunity. And that was authorization that was granted to us by the legislature back in 2004. And so the ability for the voters to tax themselves for transportation improvements is unique, if you will, and it's an opportunity to really invest locally and really establish your priorities locally.
So where's the money come from?
So the money is sales tax. So it's a half-cent sales tax. Currently, all the transactions that occur in Pima County pay a half-cent sales tax for the RTA, for the transportation improvements. Okay, what's basically happening is that those sales tax revenues will cease if it's not reauthorized by the voters in March of 2026. And so the sales tax is on any retail sales, with the exception of groceries and pharmaceuticals. Very important. I think people ask me that quite frequently. Groceries and pharmaceuticals are excluded, but every other retail transaction would pay a sales tax of up to 0.5%.
So vehicles would presumably have the RTA tax applied to it, correct?
That's correct. They do now, and they would continue. So the key piece here, Bruce, is this is not an additional tax.
Right.
This is not an additional amount. This is the same level that people are paying today. So it's the same half-cent that's paid today will be paid in the future if the voters authorize it. There's not an additional tax. It's important to focus on that.
This is Tucson or this is Pima County?
Yes, it's the entirety of the county, which would include Tucson, but also all the other municipalities, all the other entities within the county. So it's the entirety of Pima County, all retail sales.
So as RTA 1.0 is fading off into the sunset, what are the greatest accomplishments?
Well, if you look at the number of projects, the sheer volume of projects, we've accomplished over 1,000 different projects. Everything from roadway improvements, and most folks point to roadway improvements, right? So you think of the Twin Peaks interchange. That was an RTA project. Houghton Road expansion, or an RTA project. But then you start to look at safety improvements like Hawks, or these are the on-demand pedestrian crossings, the toucans, the bicycle safety improvements, intersection improvements across the entirety of the region. And transit is a component as well. The dial-a-ride and the paratransit, particularly for those outlying areas that have that need to get to those goods and services, medical, school, et cetera.
So, in terms of successes, because all those are things that we see every day, do people take them for granted now? And do they really understand if they're voting on this come March? Do they really understand this is where all of that funding came from?
The short answer is no. No, they don't. Because we've actually asked folks, we did some polling a while back. Actually, we didn't do it. There was some polling that was accomplished that I had a copy or had an opportunity to review. And only about 13% of the population knows about the RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority. But when you start chatting with them and you say, well, but have you ever heard of the Twin Peaks interchange? And they're like, well, of course, but we thought that was a Marana project, or we thought that was a county project. And when we start talking about Houghton Road, and we start talking about these projects, these investments that the RTA has made, they realize like, oh, we didn't realize that. And quite frankly, that was by design, because when the RTA is involved, we really want the local jurisdictions to take the lead. We want them to be the ones to, not only get the credit, but take the lead in developing the project and making sure that the local needs are met during those project development processes. And so oftentimes people don't know about the Regional Transportation Authority. And so here we are having to go back to the voter, right? And folks are scratching their heads saying, well, who is the RTA? So one of the things that we've worked really hard at in the last few months now, and we're going to work through the election, is letting people know what the RTA is and making sure that they're clear on not only what we do, but the importance of what we do.
So you've had some great successes. What about any disappointments?
So we had some challenges. So let me continue on the successes just for a minute, just to kind of paint the picture, and then we'll go into some challenges that we've had. So the RTA, with the $1.6 billion investment in the sales tax that you asked about, has translated that into over $3 billion in private investment. And so when you look at the leveraging, if you will, everything from the streetcar downtown and the incredible economic development that has caused in the downtown Tucson area. I mentioned Twin Peaks, Houghton Road, et cetera. There's a huge investment there that the private sector has made as a result, not to mention creating 40,000 permanent jobs. And those are not construction jobs. And by the way, we actually hired Jim Rounds, who's an economist up in Phoenix, to come down and do an analysis of what that impact was. But now let's talk about some challenges. And one of the biggest challenges was the fact that our original projections for the RTA had us at increasing population by over 500,000 back in 2006. So we were slated, at least based on the projections, to be a community of somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 million people. This is the entirety of the region. Well, that didn't materialize, right? We're at about we're just shy of about 1.1. Okay. Well, when you look at that kind of a shortfall in growth, all of a sudden that translates into a very significant drop in sales tax and the projections of the sales tax. So the model, that initial model overstated that population growth. The second thing that happened was nobody had anticipated a pandemic. And, I don't like to use excuses. They're just facts, right? So when you start looking at the data and you realize that the projections during that time frame dropped pretty dramatically, and then the inflationary cost, the cost of improvements, basically everything from steel to concrete to rock to gravel, all of those things went up dramatically. We had a very significant shortfall. Now, just to give you a round number, okay, imagine that the original projection was somewhere between about $2.7 billion would have been what we had projected to take in when we came up with $1.6 billion. That's $1 billion shortfall in revenue. I mean, that's just incredible. And so when you start to look at that, what do you do? Now, to the region's credit, to the board of directors and to the regional council's credit, they really swept a lot of that regional money that comes to the area and put it towards the RTA to complete projects. But we're short. We're short on funding on two main projects or two big projects. One of them is Tangerine, the extension from basically Oro Valley over to the freeway. And then the second is Grant Road, the completion of Grant Road. Now, the RTA Next plan has 7 projects from RTA 1. Okay, 2 of them need additional funding. But 5 of them, what I've suggested is we don't need the same level of roadway that we had that we had projected back in 2006. So what I've suggested is let's rescope them. Fancy word for let's leave it the same roadway, but we're going to change the configuration. We don't need 6 lanes on Silver Bell. We only need 4 lanes based on the growth. And I go back to that conversation. So that was a challenge, to be honest with you. And I think that it's important that we talk about that and we discuss, what happened, but also the game plan for getting it fixed. Right? And how do we ensure that those projects are in fact delivered? And so our commitment and the way that the board has outlined the plan is those are delivered in the first quarter of RTA Next. So it's basically the completion of those projects in the first period of RTA Next.
So the voters come in, let's say they say, yes, we believe in you, or we don't believe in you, but we're going to vote for it anyway. What's it take to get Grant Road done?
So I just had a meeting. It's a great question. I'm probably asked about that road more than any other improvement across the entire
Grant Road, where's that? I haven't been on that road now in almost a year.
I know.
Eb, we need to take Bruce down there and let him enjoy that. So let's talk about that because I think it's important that you really dissect a project. And as you know, I'm an engineer, and so I like to dissect things and really understand all the detail and all the pieces to it. When you look at projects in the urban core, Grant Road's an example of that. The reality is they're extremely complex, and they've got 2 levels of complexity that most other projects don't have. One of them is right-of-way acquisition. So when you look at the next phase, we've got over 100 parcels of property that need to be acquired. 100. Actually, it's more than 100, so it's closer to 120. Those are conversations with individual property owners, business owners, residential people, and business owners, quite frankly. So it's the whole package. That takes an inordinate amount of time, including, many iterations of that. And so those are, I'll use the term, years of conversation, years of discussion. The second is utility relocations. And you can see the massive infrastructure. Our partners at TEP, our partners at Lumen, our partners at Southwest Gas, our partners at Cox, all of those folks are impacted by a roadway like this. Well, guess what? Those utilities, this is not their main business. Their main business is not relocating their facilities so that we can build our road project. And so, in essence, we become, subordinate to their main business, their main power, their main gas, et cetera. Well, what does that equate to? It equates to time. And so when you see and you get frustrated over the lack of movement, we have to understand how this all works. Now, the last thing I will tell you is if we were able to close the road from point A to point B and build it, we'd cut half the time or more off of it. But the fact that we keep the roads open during these construction projects because of the businesses, because of the residences, we have to account for that traffic during the course of that project, and it just extends the time. Now, I will tell you, I just had a meeting with the contractor, actually 2 days ago, and the conversation was really about what do we need to do to facilitate their movement. How do we do this? Can they work later at night? Can they, do 2 shifts? Can we do all of those or potentially have cost implications. So the conversation then is, okay, what does it look like? How does that translate into delivery? And so what I've suggested to the board is we have to focus on delivery. So yes, the budget, make sure we have the dollars in hand and that we're accountable for that, but it's also delivery to be able to show that we can make progress on these projects in a very quick time frame.
So Grant Road for the moment is dead in the water.
No. As a matter of fact, we recently authorized, I'm sorry if I gave that impression, I apologize. No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the opposite's true. We've kicked it loose to a point where we are out there actively having conversations about right-of-way acquisition. Matter of fact, the board has authorized me and my team to go out and help with that right-of-way acquisition. So traditionally, that was not a role the RTA would play. Traditionally, we would say to the jurisdictional partner, in this case the city of Tucson, okay, we have the funding, go off and do this. Well, the RTA has the authority to deliver the project. So we can actually go out and contract. We can go out and have conversation with homeowners and property owners about property acquisition. That's not a role that traditionally we've played, but we're going to play that. As a matter of fact, like I said, I have authorization to do that, and we're starting that process now. Again, in partnership with the city or in partnership with the other jurisdictional partners. But we're saying, hey, we've got to move this. And if your capacity is strained, we need to bring capacity on our end.
So when you're talking with the homeowners and the business owners, how much eminent domain comes into play here? And how do you make sure the homeowner feels like he didn't get screwed over?
Absolutely. Extremely important. That's an extremely important component. So one of the reasons why there is such a long, and I'll call it years of negotiations and conversation, is because generally speaking, no one wants to go down eminent domain. You just don't
Right.
want to do that, right? Because that's heavy-handed. But there is a reality there, right? Eventually, you've got to say, look, we're not ever going to come to agreement here. We're going to have to go and have somebody help us with this, right? And so, in a perfect world, we negotiate. We go over and we say, here's the appraised value. We used independent appraisers. They give us costs or estimates on the value, and then we present that and we go back and forth and hopefully come to an agreement. Oftentimes, or sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes there's a big difference. Well, we keep trying. Well, in the meantime, if we don't go to condemnation, we don't have right of entry. We can't go in there and use that property.
Right.
If you go to eminent domain, you go to condemnation, you get right of entry the next day. So we can start, even though the property is still tied up, if you will,
Sure.
we can go out and start construction. So one of the things that I'm suggesting that we may want to consider, now we don't have the authority, the RTA does not have the authority for eminent domain or for condemnation. The municipalities do. So what I'm thinking is we would get it right up to that point once we've done everything we could, and then we'll hand it over to the agency and we say, okay, here's one that I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on. Go get right of entry now. And then we can continue to negotiate, as far as what the value is and what the price is, but we've got to have right of entry. And that right of entry is key so we can keep moving, because the utilities can't relocate their facilities without that.
So you get a homeowner, let's say the appraised value that you come up with is $500,000.
Okay.
Just throwing it out there. And for the sake of argument, 3 independent appraisers come up within dollars of that number. You're not going to want to pay more than that, but are you ever in the position that you have to pay more for that to make that work? And how does that work out? Because if I'm a homeowner, I'm not going to want to sell to move without having an incentive more than here's what your property's worth.
Yes, that's a great question. I don't want to
I understand.
give all of the trade secrets, but I don't mind being honest and open with you about the approach. So, no, the answer is you don't want us as taxpayers, you don't want us to spend more money on a property than what the appraised value demonstrates or shows, right? However, there is a cost to that delay. And that's really the conversation that I've been having with the board is, if we're delaying this project or a project for many months, years, all of a sudden you start looking at the cost of those goods, cost of the steel and the concrete. It's like, time out here. It may be of value to pay a small premium, if you will, to try to get these properties off the dime. But again, that eminent domain, that right of entry is the key.
Right.
Now, I will also tell you that costs money. We've got to hire attorneys, they've got to hire attorneys. And so that could be considered an inefficient use of money to just do it that way all the time. So then there's an opportunity for us to say, well, hold on. Let's negotiate, say, look, it's going to cost you, on a $500,000 property, it's going to cost you $10,000 to hire an attorney. It's going to cost us $10,000 or $20,000. We'll split the difference. Here's our offer: $510,000, $515,000, and we're done.
Okay.
Because that's a reasonable approach to accomplishing.
So let's move from eminent domain talk, because that probably goes above the head of about 80% of our listeners and viewers. Mike, I've often said that Tucson knows what it doesn't want to be, but hasn't figured out what it wants to be. I frequently travel to Phoenix on business. I take the 303 up to northwest corner of Phoenix area in Surprise, come into north central Phoenix, go out to Mesa, and then down to over and down to Ahwatukee, all in a day. I fly through traffic, even during rush hour. I mean, that system there really works. RTA is great because it's fixing some of the infrastructure issues that have not been addressed over the years. But when do we get to a point, do you think, where we have the sort of rapid transit, not necessarily with buses and streetcars, but for cars to get from one place to another?
Great question, Bruce. Let me date myself a little bit. So the freeway, the 202 that comes in there near Ahwatukee, when I was a state engineer with ADOT, that project was in its infancy, and we had a team go out that was in my group, go out and negotiate with the Gila River Indian community to get that done. And I remember thinking, wow, if we can pull this off, this is going to be incredible. So you're validating the fact that it's an incredible opportunity. Yeah. Unfortunately, that kind of a conversation should have happened in Tucson probably decades ago, where the rapid movement of cars around the community would have been something that the voters or the community would have had to deal with, many, many decades ago, and I'd say probably 20, 30 years ago. The reality is we just spent all this time talking about eminent domain, right? The reality is because the vast majority of the region now is built out. If you think of an east-west or even a southeast to northwest corridor, it's all built out, which means that the cost of acquiring that property is just incredible. It's out of sight, right? And so when you start to think of it that way, we've got to do the best we can within the infrastructure that we have. And so a lot of what we're focused on is making sure that the congestion over time is either reduced or kept at the same level as it is today, even with additional growth going forward. And that's really got to be the focus. The second piece, though, is the safety piece, making sure that people are safe when they get in their vehicles, that they're safe getting from point A to point B. And that's been a huge piece, everything from, going to your medical appointments to your going to school and all the things that go along with that, going to your employment, et cetera.
Explain how RTA and RTA Next in the future works with the city. City's the biggest dog in the kennel. They have, the mayor and council have their perspectives on what transportation needs to look like. How is RTA Next negotiating with the city in order to get both equity as well as the best plan to put forward that everybody's going to buy off on?
Sure. So about 51.3% in that ballpark of the improvements within RTA Next are within the city of Tucson. And that was, I'll use the term negotiated, but it was also based on need. Now, you can look at it different ways. You can look at the fact that the city has about 52% of the population. You can look at it in terms of the revenue that the city generates. But you start to look at the urban core, which we'll call the city of Tucson, has needs that are very different than Marana, Oro Valley, Saudita, the unincorporated areas of Pima County. And so the conversation then really looks at the regional need for improvement. And the improvement has to be all-inclusive. As you know, the plan has multiple pieces to it. The one thing that we've heard loud and clear is that people are tired of potholes, right? People are tired of pavement conditions.
I hit one by Target as Grant turns into Tanque Verde, and Grant turns into Kolb last night. I thought I was going to lose my fillings.
There are stories like that abound, right? So the conversation then is, how do we change the plan to address that need, right? Now, we don't have the authority to go out and fill potholes. Can't do that.
Right.
However, what we can do is we can put dollars towards pavement rehabilitation across the region. And so the plan has $177 million for pavement rehabilitation. And what that does is that gives us an opportunity to preserve that pavement, to basically make sure that that pavement is in good shape for at least 10 years. That's one of the criteria, is that pavement has to be good for at least 10 years. That's different than going out there and fixing a pothole. Sure. that then we get into that. But if you look at the city's share and you look at the city's component, one of the pieces that people oftentimes ask is, well, what about transit, right? Transit is the big issue, a big nugget for the city of Tucson. So I dissected that because I wanted to understand that as well. Well, actually, only 41% of the RTA funding goes to the city of Tucson, which is really interesting because most people think that when you look at the transit element within the RTA, you think the vast majority goes to the city, and that's not true. It's only about 41%. It's actually less than what most people think, and less than half. And so the conversation then is, how do we bring the city along? Well, we bring them along by explaining to them that, hey, Cortero Road, Tangerine Road, Moore Road, Interchange, those are important. They're not in the city, but they're important. But they're not only important to the city of Tucson, they're also important to Oro Valley, right? Because those are feeders, if you will, to those communities. But then you start looking at Saurita interchange, you start looking at the Reeder Road interchange, you start looking at these other regional improvements, which will help and facilitate the movement of people, goods, and services across the region. That's the conversation. And that, quite frankly, is leadership, is understanding what's good for the region on a macro scale.
So a lot of those interchanges require additional funding from the feds, which probably is not going to be as robust as it's been, say, over the past 20 years or so. So does that mean that there's going to be more money needed from the localities, whether it be Saurita, as well as Oro Valley or Marana, to get those projects done?
So not exactly, and I'll explain that. So yes, there's additional money or funding that's necessary for those interchanges, but the federal component is actually less than the state component. So every year, the region for the state highway system gets about $150 million. Okay, and so that's how, when you see the improvements on I-10, you see dollars that are coming in from the state for the state system. Well, so what we've done is we've leveraged, as you know, Ted Maxwell's our representative for Pima County. We've taken his lead and we've leveraged RTA money to get more state money. Now, the state gets some money from the feds, but it is not a purely fed, component or funding source. That state money is what we're really focused on for these interchanges. Because when we go to the voter and we say, hey, we're going to get this done, we can't be going back to them and saying, hey, you know what, we thought we were going to get additional money from the feds and we didn't get it. We've got a pretty good line on those state dollars, and we believe very strongly that we can pull those off. We've got a new interchange at Moore Road. We've got improvements at Tangerine. We've got improvements at Cortero. Extremely important. You've probably been on the freeway getting off on Tangerine. That's an accident waiting to happen, right? I mean, we all know that. We can see that. So the urgency is incredible, not just for the region, but also for the state, because that's the main line that gets impacted there.
So, Michael, let me just get to this. The project that the city is engaged in right now on 6th Street by the University of Arizona, they're doing a lot of work there. They're actually reducing traffic flow, making the street narrower or opening up to alternate forms of movement. How does that play into RTA making traffic move easier here in the region?
So that's actually, I believe that's a Prop 407 project, and there's a couple of different sources of money for that, as I understand it. But if you look at transportation as a whole, and you look at the entirety of mobility, moving people, goods, and services from one area to the other, the reality is it's all aspects of transportation. And so when you start looking at only one aspect, like cars, then it generally can be at the expense of pedestrian or bicycles or other modes of transportation. And so the conversation then is, how do we look at the entirety of the system? And so when that improvement was contemplated, and I'll put my old city hat on, when that improvement was contemplated, we actually ran models to see what it would do to the traffic. And what we found was that it would not burden the traffic either on Broadway or on Speedway to make that improvement on 5th and 6th Street. And so the reality is that it will enhance those other modes of transportation without impacting or negatively impacting the road or the car's ability to get from point A to point B.
Even on game day?
Game day might be an anomaly, Bruce, I'll be honest with you. But that's an anomaly now, so I would say that. By the way, I really like your Block A.
Thank you very much. It's going old style.
That's it.
Michael Ortega, thanks for being a glutton for punishment for all of our benefit. But someone had to do it. I'm glad you stepped up to lead the pack. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you can maybe find time to join us again once or twice before March 10th. Our listeners and viewers, this is really a project. This is an issue that we need to embrace. We spent almost 20 years turning these kind of packages down. It's time that we get this thing going again. It's a much better plan than I think some people in town think, and I hope it is successful.
Bruce, thank you, and Eb, thank you. I'm happy to come back. You just invite me, and I know where you are now, and I'm happy to come back and we can talk. And as you can see, I'm pretty open about whatever's going on.
You bet. Well, I appreciate your
Thanks,
candor
Michael.
and truthfulness. Right. We need to pause a little bit to pay some bills. No channel flipping. We'll be right back after we hear from the folks who help us keep the show on the air. So stay tuned. We'll return with Jimmy Hawkins to talk about his new book, The Heart of The Heart of a Wonderful Life. Anyway, we'll be right back.
You're listening to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now a word from our sponsor.
It's termite season.
Hi, it's me.
And bugs fear the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control.
Go blue at Essential Pest Control. We'll eliminate those bugs, bees, and termites. And stop paying too much to that national provider. Buy local for great service and affordable rates. Call Essential Pest Control because termites fear the blue.
Run for your life.
Call for the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. 886-3029. That's 886-3029. Or check online at essentialpest.com.
This is Eb Wilkinson with Wilkinson Wealth Management, where we manage money for gun owners. What does it mean to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired? It means designing a plan that allows you to do the things you want to do, outpace inflation, and never run out of money in your lifetime. If you want to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired, call me, Eb Wilkinson, at 777-1911. That's 777-1911 or WilkinsonWealthMGMT.com.
I'm proud to welcome my good friends at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail to Inside Track as an advertiser. Jamie Kipper and her staff are conservation experts. They sell round and square steel tubing, metal plate and roofing materials, as well as new and used steel, aluminum, and stainless steel to ranchers, artists, interior designers, roofers, as well as you do-it-yourselfers out there. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail is open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to noon. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, 701 East 36th Street. Call 520-209-1576. That's 520-209-1576. Or go to TucsonIronRetail.com. Come by and be sure to ask for Jamie. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail. This is what conservation and repurposing is all about.
Welcome back to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now back to our show.
Show brought to you by my great company, Wilkinson Wealth Management, who helps Bruce's family. Let us help you as well. Call me today at 777-1911. Let us guide you to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired.
Yeah, he says it a lot better than me.
And I will tell you, especially if you're affected by the federal government and when they get shut down, you get shut down, we need to talk to make sure nothing happens to you when that takes place. Also brought to you by Essential Pest Control, Tucson Iron and Metal Retail, and Bruce's great company, Paul Ash Commercial Real Estate, where they make things happen. They make great things happen every day.
So, yep, we're officially in the Christmas
we are
holiday
officially
season,
in the.
aren't we?
We are, and it started, I think, in March at Costco, but. We are pleased to welcome someone who starred in a movie which exemplifies what the holiday is all about. He played Jimmy Stewart's and Donna Reed's young son, Tommy, in It's a Wonderful Life. Jimmy went on to a long-term successful entertainment career. He's got a new book out, The Heart of It's a Wonderful Life, published by HarperCollins, which is available in bookstores and online.
We don't have Jimmy yet, though.
Where is Jimmy? That is such a great. I got to turn my. Let me see if that works. That is such a great show, Bruce. That is every Christmas.
Yeah.
We watched that.
So, and actually, I watch it even if I scroll through on something and I see it, during the middle of the summer, because when we get Jimmy on the line here, which hopefully will be very shortly, it's a show that really demonstrates that every individual plays a role in the world. Okay?
Yes.
If you weren't my friend, that would create a void in my life. If I was your father and I died when you were 6 years old, that would create
That's
a
an
void
absolute
in your
void.
life.
Absolutely.
Okay? And everybody has an opportunity to create change and things for the better in this world. And that's what makes the show so great. For me anyway, and I think for a lot of people. Tony, do we have Jimmy yet? Oh, great. Jimmy Hawkins.
Jimmy.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, welcome. You have entered. You've enjoyed a very successful life in the entertainment business. Was
Very blessed, yes.
Was It's a Wonderful Life your first movie?
No. I had done my first movie was Spencer Tracy at MGM in 1943, and Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy were my parents. It was called The Seventh Cross. Now, while I was doing that film, the AD said, the next stage over is they're doing a Lana Turner movie, and they can't find a kid to play her child in the film, and your kid would be perfect. So when things are lull here, I'm going to take you over to introduce you to the director and see if he feels the same. Well, I went over there, and boom, I was signed to do that film. So I had done other work before It's a Wonderful Life, yes, to answer you.
So, how are you selected to play Tommy in the movie?
Well, they saw every kid in town. When there was 4 Bailey kids, they saw every 12-year-old kid, every 4-year-old boy, the 2 girls, same way. Capra saw us. He never read any of us. He just talked to us and got a feel. Could they take direction? And then one day they called us, and we went out to the studio, and they took us on the sound stage where they were rehearsing with Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, and they brought him out on the front doorstep of the 320 Sycamore house and took a picture of us, and Capra said, "That's my Bailey family." And that was it. Wow. So it took 3 or 4 interviews, but thank God I got the part. So it's a wonderful experience, and it's lived throughout my life. And I'm blessed to still be around to be able to talk with you about it and tell people about the film and its message.
So 2026 will mark 80 years since the movie was released. Why is it still considered such a classic?
Well, as I say, I've got this new book coming out, The Heart of It's Wonderful Life, and I put the reader into the book. He's really the leader, and he sees how Capra made the movie, all the steps, how actors got up for the part. But when all is said and done, I was talking to Sheldon Leonard one day about the movie, and he said, Jimmy, the movie never changed. The people change. They need that message more than ever now. And the message is that each man's life touches so many others. If they weren't around, it would leave an awful hole. And it shows that we're all important. We're here for a reason to touch a life or change a life or whatever. But it shows that we're important, that if we were taken out of the equation, the world would go off its axis, actually. So that's the message that everybody gets, and it makes them feel good. It makes them feel that I'm important. Look at George Bailey. He didn't think he did anything. He always was there to help community and family and friends, but it was just, that's what you do. And then he got to see what life would have been like if he'd never been born. And my God, he lived in Pottersville, and the town just went to the dogs just because George Bailey wasn't there. And that's the same way of each one of us. Things would be really different if we weren't in the equation. and people see that, and they may not have all the money in the world or be the best looking, but they know I make a difference. I can change things. I can make things happen. And that's why it still grows and gets bigger and bigger, because it shows people they're important.
Hey, Jimmy, Bruce Ash here. The Heart of It's a Wonderful Life. It's published by HarperCollins. Just came
Right.
out about a month or so ago, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And I think you did another publication for the 75th anniversary. But in this book, you talk about the interactions that you had in the film and later in life. Talk about your relationship with Donna Reed. I loved an interview that you recently did. I think it was in 2021. And you were talking about the last time, because you appeared on not only with Donna Reed, who was beautiful, one of the most beautiful women I think ever that was on the silver screen. You played in that movie with her, It's a Wonderful Life, but you also appeared on her show, the Donna Reed Show, later in the 60s in a TV series. Talk about that last time that you saw Donna Reed. And her touching your cheek. I thought that was just an awesome story.
Yeah, it was. Wow, something. When I finished the Annie Oakley series, I had grown and I could do older parts now. And so I was sent over to the studio to a brand new series that was going to go on the air called The Donna Reed Show. And I played the boyfriend in this episode of Shelley Fabre. And so I got the part, and then show up and they read the script around the table. And I saw Donna Reed at the other end of the table. So I got up and I went, introduced myself, said, I played your son, Tommy Bailey, in It's a Wonderful Life. She said, oh, yes, I know. They said that you were signed for this. Oh, it's so nice to meet. You know, we had a nickname for you on It's a Wonderful Life. I said, oh, really? What was that? She said, we used to call you Rip Van Winkle. I said, Rip Van Winkle? Why is that? She said, because you could fall asleep and sleep all during them preparing the shot, setting it up with all the hot lamps under you. You just fell asleep. But then it was time to do this show, and they'd wake you up, and you'd be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Well, that's why we called you Rip Van Winkle. And 8 years later, I was still doing the show.
Oh, God.
And then through the years, I would have, after the show, would have lunch with Donna Reed and Paul Peterson and I, and just keep up that friendship. And when she was diagnosed and knew she was going to die, I visited her in the hospital once. And then she asked me, are you going to be over the house on Christmas Day? I said, oh, sure. I plan on stopping by. I got something special for you that I found about It's a Wonderful Life. She said, oh, okay. So I came to her house, and in the movie, when the dad is going berserk, she pulls the kids next to her, and I'm the youngest. So she pulled me towards her, and her hand was on my cheek. And I remembered that same hand was in that movie where she held my cheek when my dad's going ballistic. And here she is. I handed her this ornament to put on the tree. And I said, no, where do you want it on the tree? And so she looked at it. Oh, this is a beautiful ornament. So, oh, right over there. And she was extremely tired. She was close to passing. And so I put it on the tree, and I saw that she was very, very tired. So I went over and I said, well, I got to go now. And I just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas. And I leaned down, and her hand touched my cheek again. And I went, oh, my God, this is that lady so long ago. Oh, wow. It was just a wonderful moment to share with her that warm thing that she had about her, and what a wonderful person she was. I mean, just the best to work with. I mean, she let you do stuff in scenes, and would endorse it. I mean, by letting you do it. You try to bring something to a part that's a little unique for who you're playing in the show, and this was just a great memory that I had that connected It's a Wonderful Life with the woman, the Donna Reed, the real person. So I'll always remember that, and all the fond memories of doing her show and being with her and lunches on one, and just talking and accepting me as an adult finally, you know. So that's the story I think that you're talking about.
So Jimmy Stewart, your dad.
Yeah.
How was he? Because you had a relationship in his foundation, I think, or his museum, I guess, for some time. Talk about your relationship during the movie and then later as an adult.
Yeah, well, of course, had some very good scenes with him. We're sitting on his lap, and Frank Capra saying, "Now you're putting tinsel on his head," and your girl's pounding on the piano, and he's talking to you and your mom, and then you have some dialogue with him, and then all of a sudden he pulls me close to him, because he's remembering losing the 8,000. It's going to be very embarrassing. His brother is going to be embarrassed. The Bailey building alone is going to go by the wayside. They lost $8,000, and it's his job. It's his fault. No matter if it was Uncle Billy or not, he took the blame for it because he was the boss. And so I would have the scene with him, and he pulled me into him. Well, I'm wearing a Santa Claus mask, and it's like very rough inside, like sandpaper. And every time we rehearsed it, he would pull me close, and this mask would hike up and scratch my cheek, And this happened 3-4 times, and I was going, "Gee, why does this man keep doing this?" It's just. But I knew enough not to flinch that they're taking this movie of us, and I can't look like, oh, he's going to pull me in and it's going to hurt again. So that would help you remember a scene with him. And then Frank Capra telling me what he wanted me to do during the "excuse me" line, and it's just real nice memories. And then years later, we would pass each other at an affair, a party, or someplace, and just remember him fondly. And I was doing the 50th anniversary book, and I sent him a bunch of copies to sign for charitable organizations. And during the process of him signing it, he passed away. So one day the week after he passed away, all the books came back, all signed.
Oh my!
Wow.
He was always giving to the end. I mean, they're all signed. I mean, he was just a very nice person, fabulous actor. He had to pull things from George Bailey to get that performance, and the memories that it took to make him act a certain way. Like when his mother doesn't know who he is, he knows he's in big trouble now, and he's got to get this Clarence guy. I got to get back. I can't live in this place. Help me, get me back. God help me. And so and he got that performance from being in World War II. He was a bombardier pilot, taking his crew over dangerous places, and they have to bomb and everything. And of course, he'd lose some of the crew on the different bomber that they took, and he took it personal. He felt it was his fault that they got killed on his mission, and so he dug deep down to the way he felt when he lost those people, and brought that to George Bailey at his lowest ebb, and you could see on his face he's going someplace to get that, and it can't be very comfortable. And he would only allow Capra to do one take on the 2 times that he had to go to that dark place. And that's why his performance is so great. Wow. Those close-ups just said it all.
Yeah.
So that's why the movie, it seems so real, because the actors made it real. And Capra gave them the scenes to do that. He's a fabulous filmmaker.
So was
It's
this all
perfect
shot
movie.
on stage in a movie soundstage or outdoors, or where was it shot?
Well, it depends on where you were. Like we shot on stage 14 out the Culver City RKO Pathé studio. That was the Bailey home was built there on that stage. When they went to the town, where along the street, that was out in like Encino, Tarzana, California, with the RKO ranch, they called it. And they shot all the exteriors of the town, and the Bailey house was all done there.
The magic of movies.
Yeah, oh yeah. A lot of people think that it was shot in Seneca Falls, New York, but Capra was visiting there, and he liked the feeling he had. And of course, the town of Bedford Falls had to be cast also. It was a big star in the movie, so he felt something unique in his trip to Seneca Falls. So he brought that. He tried to bring that to the screen whenever he was shooting at the town or in the house. How did he feel walking the streets of Seneca Falls? And then he tried to capture that when Jimmy Stewart was walking down those streets of Bedford Falls.
Jimmy,
Jimmy,
yes. The thing that goes often unsaid, thinking about It's a Wonderful Life, is that the movie was a bust. It lost $500,000.
That's correct.
How ironic is it that this movie that lost money is now 80 years later still regarded as this maybe one of the most emblematic movies about American culture and the American ethos?
Yes, well, that was all written into the script, but people didn't need that message in 1946. It wasn't until 30 years later that the film, somebody at the studio didn't pick up its copyright. So it could be shown on thousands of different TV stations all over the country for free, and they took advantage of it. And by doing so, people would watch the film. They could see it for the first time since 1946. They had never heard of it or anything. And they saw that this picture was telling these people like Sheldon Leonard, who played Nick the bartender. I was getting some thoughts of his to take back to the Donna Reed Festival, its 50th anniversary of It's a Wonderful Life. And they were setting up his shot to tell stories about it, to share with the people at the festival. I said, isn't that something? This picture was a flop when it first came out, and now it's a big deal. He said, I've thought of that myself. He said, but you've got to remember something, Jimmy. The movie never changed. The people changed. The people need that message more than ever now. They need to know that they mean something in life. They live lives of just going to work and coming home, and they don't think they've done anything. But this movie shows them that they have touched lives, and for the better. And that's why they gravitate to it, Jimmy, because they know they're important, that one man can make a difference. Jimmy Stewart is not George Bailey. He didn't think he was doing anything either until he got to see what life would have been like if he had never been born. And it was hell. That town was just corrupt, and all the things that he tried to do for people, get them their own houses and keep Potter away from the building and loan so that there's someplace people could get money at a fair price. That's what they saw in the film. I mean something. No matter if I think I've done nothing, I have. And I took the film to Attica Prison some years ago and showed it. And then I had a question and answer after the screening and asked them. I said, I want to have you ask me any question you want about the film, how you thought of it, what you thought of it. But I want to ask the first question. Did you see in the film that George Bailey got a second chance in life? Like you've been given a second chance in Attica here? Did you see any of that happening? And one by one, all these guys raised their hands to talk and share all the little notes they had made about watching the movie. And they said that they felt bad being there, have done something that got them there. But they know it is a second chance. And if they do good and get out, that they can be good citizens. And they said they're going to try hard, because I'd never got to see my daughter grow up. Just had her mother, and nothing that her dad could bring to her, because I'm in this place. But I'm never coming back once I get out of here. That movie has touched my life.
Well, Jimmy, we're going to have to end it there. Before we finish up, though, tell our listeners how they can get your new book, The Heart of It's a Wonderful Life.
Well, Amazon's the best. Most people belong to Amazon, and they could have the book tomorrow free, free delivery. But that they are the book. This shows what Capra took to make this movie, and what they have to do to achieve their dream. And the whole book is all that, and they have the script of different scenes from the movie that they see. Look at what Jimmy Stewart made out of that speech. Wow, they're just printing on a page, but he made those speeches live. So that's what they'll get out of the book. Just do your dream, do it your way. That's what they'll learn. But page after page is encouragement. Do it your way. Do it, though, but do it.
Love the book. Love the book. Thanks, Jimmy, for joining us. You're great. You're a great American and a great guest. Appreciate you coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Before we wrap up, a special holiday shout out to a great American tech entrepreneur, Michael Dell, who just made a $6 billion plus investment in the next generation. Talk about somebody, one man who's making.
It is huge. A guy who started off in his college dorm building computers. People coming up, hey, I saw what you did. Can you build one for me?
Yeah.
This is gigantic.
Young kids getting a tax-free fund for their future. This is the start of what could be hundreds of billions set aside for the American future that will eventually probably grow into trillions of dollars. Well done, Michael Dell. Eb,
hey, all of our Inside Track podcasts are available on Live the Dream Media's Facebook page, YouTube, Apple, Instagram, and X. Thanks for joining us today here on Inside Track. We'll be back again next Wednesday with another action-packed show. Until then, this is Eb Wilkinson.
And Bruce Ash.
We'll see you again in 167 hours.